by societal structure. Maybe I'll say that. That's the rule breaker. You know, we are breaking the rules of societal structure to fit what it is that we need to say in that time. Yeah, that's what I'd say to that.
Awesome. I think in on that note, rather, in terms of this sort of revolutionary sort of ideology of how do we revolutionize, how do we bring forward what's new in music, what's new in art, and things of that nature. And this is a question for anybody. What are some of the new things that you would like to see moving forward with music? What are some different styles of music that you're enjoying right now, but maybe what you'd like to see more of? More of Black artists in a certain genre, or more of a representation of a group that you feel isn't being properly represented in the field of music. What would you like to see go forward as we continue this sort of trend of revolutionizing music? And as a further note to the young artists, to tap on or tap into rather, what sort of things would you like to do, or would you be interested in doing to help contribute to sort of pushing that narrative forward of more inclusivity, more diversity within music, and sort of breaking these rules, if you will?
I can go first. In that thought of diversity, I would like to see a lot more integration just in music in general, because we have fine lines where we think people are supposed to be singing. Even in minorities, we have lines where we think people are supposed to be singing, and then we'll say, well, some people can't sing this because that's ours, and it's music. And as important as it is, there are many people today where if you heard them, just their voices alone, without ever seeing who they were, you may mistake their race because of the way that they sang something. But when you heard them speak, then you'll be like, that voice does not match that speaking voice. And so we have this kind of misconception that people can't do something just because they look a certain way, or because they act a certain way, or because they carry themselves a certain way. And I think that we should have more integration in the music field going forward, so that we have this understanding. We can pull things from different kinds of music. From what you understand from the pop world, I can put into the R&B world, and we can make something new, something that no one has ever seen before. It's when people are willing to collaborate despite all odds, and despite whatever social lines have been made around music, that new music is created and is celebrated as well. Because a lot of times we celebrate stuff that we don't understand the process for, and the process for it may take a lot more. Um, Rebellion is the only word that comes to mind. It may take a lot more rebellion. It may take a lot more, this is what we have to impose in order to see it happen. And so just going forward, I'd like to see a lot more integration in all fields of music in general.
I would probably add authenticity. I think, it's a pressure for artists, young and experienced, to pretty much kind of imitate. I mean, you can imitate to some degree, but I think to some respect, as a listener, not just as a performer or practitioner of music, sometimes I get kind of bored because I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. So I think what I would like to see is more of this authenticity, and young artists and creators being able to have that space and not feel the pressure of a label or a record label, or individuals who are in those positions of power kind of domineering this idea that you have to copy what has come before you, because I think that's what makes it kind of mundane and not as attractive in terms of bringing people to music across genres, not just one specific genre, but just across genres, bringing something that's unique. I think that's what was powerful during the 20th century, is that we had between Motown and you had rock, you had soul, you had all of these different new voices coming out. And then now things are kind of like in one boat, kind of drifting down the river. So I like to see people taking kind of a different approach, so that we can have some more diversity in just what we hear and experience.
Yes. I completely agree with the previous two answers, but just to add a little bit, I would really, really, really like to see more of a message. So this isn't really new, but a lot of the newer music it doesn't have the messages that should be heard. I would like to hear more, just, I guess, kind of start a conversation rather than just hearing this new, I guess, mumble music to just have a conversation and actually mean something to someone and enlighten someone in a positive way.
All great responses, and I certainly agree with a great deal of them. I would love to see all of this represented in the educational system. That's the revolution I want to see. I think that far too much of the beauty of these different forms of music have not been allowed a space into scholarship and academia. And we have not encouraged our young creators, whether they be composers, arrangers, instrumentalists, singers, producers, administrators. We have not encouraged them enough to be educated and to educate themselves within the walls of of the classroom about R&B and soul and gospel and trap and any of these new forms that we have. I just think that there is missed opportunity for we as educators to branch out and to allow our students to branch out. So that's what I would like to see. I would like to see more of what it is that we hear outside, brought into the classroom. We can educate about these forms, and we need to be educated about these forms too. Yeah.
Awesome. I think those were really good answers. And honestly, those are all the questions that I had. I think that was a really great way of sort of concluding this section as the participants for the next section are logging on. I think you guys did a really great job at sort of rounding us out in that way. I think you all had very profound things to say. So I want to thank you all so much for making the time to connect and share. And I look forward to seeing what is going to come forward from each one of you, especially the young artists. So thank you so much. All right, now we're going to invite the youth playwrights as well as their mentor coaches into the room, and we're going to further explore where our Bold Art, Brave Voices discussion is going to take us. So I believe everyone is here. Oh, there's still some people logging on. A chance to log on and get set up. All right, I believe we have the majority of people here, but we'll just continue the discussion as folks are coming in. So I'd like everyone to please join me in welcoming Faith, Joseph, Rontasia, Michael, Shaquille, Darius, Samaya, Juliana, Zaria, and Jose. Welcome, 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 everyone. We've been having a discussion with the composers, and we've been talking about the importance of art building in communities. And for me, it brings up the power of storytelling. So I'd like to know for all of the playwrights, what role do you see storytelling, what do you see as the role rather of storytelling, in particular theater and playwriting, having in shaping our future? So with all of the things that we have going on in the state of the world currently, but also in how the world is moving forward, how do you see storytelling as a whole, but specifically theater and playwriting, in taking on these sort of new stories as we move forward into the future? And this is for anybody, so. Anybody can jump in here. I just wanted to maybe I should rather not reframe the question, but sort of make it more specific. But as we were have sort of been talking about like art building and the power that storytelling has, the power that all of you have as storytellers, I just kind of want to know, what do you all see the role of theater and playwriting having in shaping our future as we move forward? So you know, with the shutdown of most theatrical spaces because of the pandemic and whatnot. How do you see theater and playwriting continuing to sort of shape the narrative of our future as we move forward, as people, as artists, in any capacity? Either the young artists or coaches, anyone's free to respond.
I'll respond if that's all right. I'm one of the coaches. I directed Faith's project, and I've been teaching now for over a decade, and I can tell you that it is absolutely refreshing to hear young people's perspective, and to to have this kind of opportunity offered for young artists who are interested in playwriting. It's we I teach at Wayne State, and we have so many actors that come through our program, and often they're kind of uh, um, at a loss when it comes to finding material that really speaks to them. When looking for monologues or scenes to work on in class. And so I just think this is so lovely to kind of foster new playwrights, and to hear their perspectives and to get those perspectives out into the world.
I agree 100%. Anyone else want to tap into this conversation? We're talking about the role of storytelling and theater and playwriting in terms of shaping the future and the climate of the world that we have right now, but also going forward.
I'd like to chime in a little bit on that. I think as writers, I think we've always, at least in my opinion, that we're advocates for what we see in the world and using our art as a response to what's happening. And especially during this pandemic, I think writers and anyone in the theater, or especially, in all the different spaces, are holding spaces more accountable when it comes to diversity and allowing and giving access to new stories in a way that I haven't seen before. And I think, for me being older, is like, I'm almost done, but for the youngsters, I think this is really a great opportunity to not only write their art, but advocate and fight for their art. Because I think hopefully there's a shift in what's happening, and I think access is important. So we need to keep writing those stories and getting it out there, and showing people that our narratives shouldn't be considered kind of like electives. We're there, we're with everyone else. America is all different colors and shades, and our writing should really kind of start pushing that.
Awesome. I'm going to aim this next question at the young artists specifically, because I really want to hear from you guys. What inspires you as writers? When you sit down in front of your computer, if you're into typing, and when you sit down in your notebook, when you're writing stories in class, whenever you are brainstorming, what is your inspiration? What drives you forward? What do you want to see more of as writers? What kind of stories really speak to you that you enjoy telling, as well as what stories do you like consuming? I know we all know as writers that there is sort of a level of, what's the word, an absorption that happens from the media that surrounds you, be it literature, be it movies, television. You sort of soak up all of these things, and then you spew it back out with your own flavor on it. And I'm interested in what sort of things inspire you in that regard as well. So really, for the young artists, what is your inspiration as writers?
So I don't mind taking this one. So with inspiration and then with writing, when I write my best writing, it really is inspired off of something that I'm passionate about. So some of my passions are like violin, and so music. And so anytime I write anything about music, it's really drawn from my love of playing violin. So my inspiration comes from like things around me, things that I like to do, as well as things I see out in the world and part of my culture as being a Black young woman. So that's what I usually like get inspired from and am eager to write about.
I hear that. I hear that. I definitely understand the need for more Black voices, specifically Black women's voices, as writers, as creators of content in any medium. Any other young artists want to touch in and just sort of share what inspires them as a writer, or even as a creative, not even necessarily as a writer, but just what inspires you, and what sort of drives your voice?
For me, it would be like experience, but like with a mix of fiction, because like, you know, I like to write about things that I can like relate to, but at the same time, I like things that have happy endings. Like even if it's like rough patches, at the end it'd be a happy ending. So I like to write like from experience or like what I've seen and stuff from around me.
100%. As writers, and really just as people, I think we've all kind of noticed within media that there's sort of a resurgence of retellings or remakes or reboots or whatever you want to call it. And there's a lot of a rehashing, if you will, of old stories. And while it's always wonderful to revisit old tales, old storylines, there's sort of this interesting dichotomy between the two, and that while you are, as artists, we love to revisit old stories, there's also this sort of weird side effect that comes of that, and that it kind of takes away the space for new stories. If we're focused on remakes and retellings and revamps and revisions, there's not a whole time for new stories and new visions and things of that nature, and that often can be limiting when we think about the kinds of people that have been in control of the stories that are getting remade. Oftentimes because of the way history has happened and unfolded, there are oftentimes many of the same sort of people, the same look of people, the same way, people with the same way of thinking that are sort of in control of driving these narratives forward. So really for the young artists or the coaches, what all would you like to see moving forward as new stories? What kinds of things would you like to see being represented more? What sort of genres would you like to see have different takes? Really just anything, and that can be in the realm of theater, it can be in the realm of film, television. As creatives and storytellers, what sort of stories do you think are being underrepresented, and what would you like to see be more expounded upon in the future?
I can take one again. So I would like to see more stories of excellence with Black people, and then as well as young people of color. So that's not really represented a lot, and we know it's out there. It's just not very prominent or shown. And to see like the excellence instead of like the stereotypical roles would really be good for building role models for other young people. So I think it would really be important to see people of color instead of just the stereotypical roles, but in like the roles for excellence.
100%, 100%. I think the other thing that we have to be mindful of in terms of representation is the kind of representation. It's sort of what you were talking about. There's definitely been, I think, a surgence within the past 5 to 10 years, especially, but even more, take it back a little further with the past few decades or so. There's definitely been a rise and an increase in Black stories, but the kind of Black stories that are being told, a lot of times it doesn't sort of revolutionize the Black genre. There's not a lot of Black speculative work that is being highlighted, and Black characters in the realms of fantasy and in fiction, or in romance stories that aren't gritty or more toxic, or even stories that are not inherently about being Black. There's a lot of times there's this narrative of Black storytellers or Black people in stories, but all of them are centered around Blackness, when inherently it is possible for Black people to just be Black people without necessarily having Blackness as a theme of the story. And so I want to kind of ask our young artists, as young artists of color, what would you like to see better represented, or even just represented differently when it comes to the lens of how Black people are represented within all aspects of media? Specifically playwriting, as I know that that's sort of what we're here to talk about, but really in anything, I want to make sure that this discussion is as broad reaching as it possibly can be, so that there's no hesitancy, if you will. I'm really just interested in hearing what you guys have to say.
Is that someone speaking, or are we just hearing background?
I think that might be a background.
Well, in that case, I want to say, first of all, I'm really glad I made it in. This is like thank heavens. It was really hard. I don't know what happened, but I was trying to get into the Zoom. But I just want to say it's been a great experience working with Ms. Griggs. And I'm really excited to hear how it sounds for her. And I want to hear all the other plays as well. But the one thing I want to say about this time is that Zoom creates a challenge and an opportunity in the same way. And so that's a very exciting thing, because it makes you pare it all down. You have to figure out exactly what you want to say, and you have to get to it. And if you're my age, it's hard just getting on the Zoom. So
absolutely. Yes. Any of our young artists, would you like to tap into that, or even more free form? Is there any just ideas that you have about storytelling in general that you want to share, just in any facet or capacity?
I think emotions, like to how we express our emotions, like every kind of emotion, anxiety, happiness, sadness, just, I don't know, like if you look at the films from the black films, like films to white films, I don't know, I think emotions is portrayed like differently. And it just be interesting to see how, you will normalize every type of feeling. Yeah.
When you said emotions, that made me like think of something different. But what I was thinking about emotions would be like the hard to talk about stuff. So like how people feel stressed and anxious and stuff like that, especially in a time like how it is right now. And so I think that would be really interesting to be like more represented in films and in plays. It already is definitely represented, but to even be brought out more so people know that they're not alone and things like that, I think that would definitely be good.
I agree. If I could just ask if there's anybody that's unmuted, just so we are having a sort of one at a time. Feel free to unmute and tap in whenever you want to the discussion, but just so that we sort of alleviate background chatter. I think I want to ask a question of the coaches. What sort of things are sort of exciting you from this process, but just in general as well, with the way that young people are sort of coming about and telling their stories? There's a lot in more recent years, a lot more of a push or demand, or even just a sort of surgence of young people taking the mantle and expressing themselves in ways that in previous generations, it wasn't necessarily as prominent or as prevalent. And we are in sort of a time and space and place and where that's sort of needed, in order to push the needle forward, you kind of need a newer take on things. And so as veterans, if you will, what is exciting you about what young people are doing right now? And to take it a step further, what would you maybe like to see more of? What would you like to encourage young people to do more? Be it your personal young artists that you work with, or just anyone who may be listening as well.
I'm gonna pop in. Hi, it's Darius. Mosaic alum, so shout out to Mosaic, only the best, nothing less. Super excited. I really enjoyed working with Shaquille, and it's really awesome to be able to come back and mentor a playwright, which is it's weird because I was in your shoes just like years ago. I'm a dinosaur now, but it's really cool to be able to look back and see what the young people are doing. But um, one of the things that I really love about young people now is the fact that they're using technology to their advantage to create really, really awesome stuff. And I think a sort of goofy but really awesome example of that is the Ratatouille musical that kids made on TikTok, and the fact that like young people are using technology like TikTok and all types of different things to change the way that stories are told, to change the way that plays are told, in musicals. So I think that's something that's really exciting me. And I guess the thing that I would sort of encourage this, coming generation to do is continue to do that, continue to use technology to your advantage, whether it be Zoom, TikTok, whatever it is, to tell your stories. I think it's really awesome to see young people like innovating and using technology way better than anyone in my school did when I was a kid. So that's my take on it.
Fantastic. Any other coaches want to tap in? And just sort of share how they feel, what their opinion is of the way that young people have been creating as of recently.
What I love about youth as a writer, most of my work is theater for young audiences. And one of the things I say is I love youth audiences because they do not filter. When they react and how they react is so honest that a lot of times us as adults forget. We tend to overthink, or we even sometimes care to like too much time thinking about what other people think. And and to see youth just really feeling empowered to say really what's in their hearts without filtering themselves is really such a beautiful thing. And hopefully we'll see more of that.
Definitely. I agree. I'm going to ask a few more questions here before we wrap up. As far as playwriting goes specifically, who are some of the inspirations of you all as writers? It doesn't necessarily have to be a playwright, but who sort of inspires the works that you've created for this specific event? What were some of the inspirations that you drew from in that regard? And this can be a coach answered question as well, if there are certain things that inspire you as writers, just to sort of generate and get the conversation going. What else sort of inspires the way that we create or have created during this process? And I can elaborate a little bit more to sort of give an even more open up the door for a wider breadth of answers. If you can talk about specifically what's been your inspiration during this this time period that we're in right now. We've been sort of in a lockdown, or in a stasis, if you will. And oftentimes people can see that as either a beautiful blessing of an opportunity, or sort of a curse when it comes to sort of being confined to your own spaces. There can be a lack of inspiration, or it can be a breeding ground for a whole new wealth of inspiration. So coaches or young artists, tell me about some of your inspirations as creatives, and how they've inspired you to create during the period of time that we currently find ourselves in.
So I think right now is really like a time of loss. So with now being such a hard time, a lot of people need like hope, and they need to be inspired, and they also need to be reached. So a lot of people, when things get hard and things like that, they might shut down. So to write something about what somebody might be going through, and that might help reach them, and that might help them grow and be able to know that, yeah, I'm not alone. So I think that's what's really important to write, and what inspired my piece as well. So I think that's really what helped me choose what I wrote about.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I can go. So what inspired me to write, especially during this time, has been my support system, like my teachers and my family. So like I will take stuff around me and I will write it down instead of just like shutting everything out. I just write it down. So like my teachers and yeah, my support system have been a real big help and real big inspiration.
A support system and a community in a sense is definitely important to any human, but especially to an artist. And I think that it's wonderful that you have that. And I want to talk and sort of take sort of a page out of that book and open the conversation to also share about sort of the communities and bonds and network that you've sort of built during this experience. You know, what have you all learned from each other? In that regard, young artists from coaches, coaches from young artists. There's oftentimes this sort of narrative that there's the narrative of youth and you know the sort of you rotten kids type of thing of like listen to your elders type thing, and then there's also the reverse of like, you know, there is certain things that those of older generations can learn from new, and vice versa. You know, anybody can learn from anyone. And so what have you all learned from each other, and how have you now strengthened your own personal connections, and how does that inspire you, and enhance your support system, to be better creatives, to be brighter creatives, to be more innovative creatives?
Well, I'll tell you what I learned is you have to start over again every time. You have to always be willing to refigure the story, rethink it, forget the assumptions you have about where you're going. And that was really helpful for me and inspiring for me. I have to remember it myself. So that's what happened when, you know, my young artist whose drive was to sing, to want to be able to sing, and that's what her character expressed. And over and over again, you stumble into, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make this happen? And then how do you get exactly what I think the young lady was saying, what Faith Christian was saying about the idea of who gathers around you and takes care of you. And so that's one of the things that I think that I found really uplifting and exciting about working. I'm saying Miss Griggs because I kept saying Rantasha wrong. That's it, right, Rantasha?
It's Rantasia.
See, that's why I was Miss Griggs. Everybody thought I was being formal, but Rantasia. Okay, now I got it. Okay, so when you're famous, your plays on Broadway, I'll say it right. Okay.
It's wonderful. I think that's a beautiful thing to express. I'm gonna sort of close this out here with one final sort of thing for the group. If you all could share just any pearls of wisdom or advice or life hacks or resources for anybody who may be listening, in terms of what you all think people who are interested, or young people or people young at heart, can do, that are interested in becoming writers or becoming creators, but maybe aren't necessarily sure about where to start or where to begin or how to do these things. I know that oftentimes when we think about all the different facets of sort of the more business oriented aspect of writing, when it comes to like copywriting and things of that nature, and just, you know, some of the more things that may not occur to a young person, or even if it does, you know, how do I go about doing that? I'm 14 and I don't know, you know, things of that nature. What all can advice or pearls of wisdom can you give from your experiences, and even young artists, what you've learned from your coaches, that may also help lend to your other young people in that regard?
So something that I really like to use is reading, which is sort of a form of studying somebody else's writing, but then you also get to have that experience and then enjoy going to another world that someone's created. Reading gives you a lot of really good insight on how to be a good writer because you're reading something that went through multiple stages of editing and things like that, and it's been published and it's been acclaimed now, and so you're reading it at its final like masterpiece level. So that's really a great way to study and learn how to write. And I also would say that what really helps is if you're writing about something you're passionate about. Now, you don't always get to write about what you're passionate about. So you have to find little things inside of what you're writing about that you are passionate about or that you do feel deeply about. So then you can really express yourself and really connect to what you're writing to, because connection is really important with your writing.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to touch base on that?
One advice that I would like to give is doing a lot of research because it gives you ideas about what to write. And also, I know that teens like me, especially first generation Americans who don't have like parents, like who don't have parents who are friendly, they want us a lot of stuff, but they can't say it because they're scared. I think writing is the best way for them to express themselves.
Absolutely. I think that is extremely powerful and profound. So thank you for that. Thank all of you for that. Anyone else have any final remarks or things that they want to say before we close out here in regards to that sort of giving pearls of wisdom to young people?
This is something that I've told every young person I've had the opportunity to work with. And one of the big things that my friends and my family always told me is dream big. Dream big. Don't let anyone tell you that your dream is too big. We had a Spider-Man musical on stage. We had a SpongeBob musical. There's nothing too big, for theater. So if you have an idea, if you have something crazy in your mind and you want to put it on paper, put it on paper, because you never know. It could be on Broadway. Dream big and don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, because you absolutely can.
Fabulous. I think I can echo pretty much everything that's been said today by everyone, and that it is possible to do and to be and to create in any facet or capacity that your mind can concoct. And I think that's definitely a sentiment that all young artists, but also all people, need to really realize. It oftentimes happens that the older that we get, the more we maybe sort of lose our way. We lose that that childlike fire, that ember, or that spark to create. And oftentimes, all it takes is somebody telling you that, hey, yes, you can, to sort of reignite that. And so I think while that is excellent advice for young people, it's excellent advice for people in general to never stop trying to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in all aspects of life, be it creatively or otherwise. So I think you guys have said some very, very profound things in that regard. And so I wanted to make sure that I echoed that, but also commended you on that profound way of thinking. We're getting ready to close out here. And as the time comes to a close, our time to view the new works of art by our playwrights and composers is coming closer. So I want to thank you all for this deeply fulfilling discussion. Give yourselves a virtual round of applause in that regard. You all are phenomenal. You're fantastic. And I invite everyone listening to use this discussion as fuel to continue these discussions in your own communities. Talk to your friends, your parents, your neighbors, whoever. And as we wrap up our Bold Art, Brave Voices panel discussion, I invite you all to grab a snack, have a good stretch, and ready yourself for what is to come with the premiere of the works of art created by these young artists in the New Voices Detroit 2021 Courage to Create. Thank you all so much for joining us, and please tune into the screen below for the premiere of the New Voices Courage to Create.